Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of KickSmarter. My name is Alex, and I'm joined here by my friend James.
Hi.
Now, this is a podcast focused around video games. I know, incredibly original, an internet podcast about video games.
I've never heard it done before. You, sir, need to get in touch with Total Biscuit.
This is truly revolutionary stuff. No, but seriously, this podcast is centered more around one specific thing that James and I are both pretty impassioned about, and that is crowdfunding in video games.
Yeah, what we're worried about mostly is the prevalence of bad eggs on the Kickstarter scene, and what we're trying to hope to do with this little podcast is to try to pick and choose which Kickstarters we think would most be worthy of your coin, and which ones might be bad eggs.
Yes, because I have never given to a large amount of crowdfunding projects for video games. James has given to a few.
Yeah.
He's had a few negative experiences, which we will detail for you in this episode. But we want to make it clear that crowdfunding itself is not inherently a bad thing. In fact, it's a really good thing. And there's a lot of potential for it in the future of indie gaming. But
so for this, sorry, go ahead.
But the thing about it is that because of how new it is, Kickstarter only got started up a couple of years ago, and now there's Indiegogo and Patreon and other such platforms for people to get their projects out there. And while these things are great, there's not a lot of quality control. In fact, it was only pretty recently that Kickstarter implemented a rule in their terms of service that you have to deliver your product if you get funded. So there's a lot of stories, people getting funded and then not delivering. So what we're going to look at is the people who are putting their projects out there, and what we think personally is worth a chance. Not necessarily things that we enjoy ourselves, but things that we think deserve a chance to be seen, to have their ideas put out there.
We're going to be using a couple examples of Indiegogos that have already ended their campaign terms today. We're not going to look at any new arrivals today, but in the next 2 weeks, or next episode, you can expect us to have kind of dug through the pile and applied our own little template of comparisons to figure out which ones are worth your time.
So, yes. So, it's fairly timely that this podcast comes out, because once it releases, there will be one particular crowdfunding project of note that will have just finished.
Yeah, we can save that for closer to the end, I think. I'd like to keep it a little positive until the last 5 or 7 minutes. I'm sure most people know what we're talking about, but we'll pick that up just a little bit.
So we have a few guidelines for what we think merits a good crowdfunding project. For video games in particular, the number one thing, most notably, is, for me at least, a playable demo. If your project has something that your backer or anyone who wants to try it can download and play, and you have just anything that can be played, then you're pretty much miles above most other crowdfunding video game projects that just start out with pieces of concept art and an idea.
And I'd like to add my own little opinion on that. It's fine if it doesn't necessarily have a demo, in my opinion, but it does matter to me if the person in question who has started this Kickstarter has produced something before without outside funding. If they can clearly show that they're passionate enough about their own product, that they can put their own time and money into it without any help, and then go on to say, hey, I could use some help, could you help me with this new game? That really, I think that goes a long way. There are a few Kickstarters that I've done, most noticeably something called Them's Fighting Herds, that have not necessarily produced a demo to go along with the game, but have produced something that they have poured a lot of time and effort into without that money. And so I think that's important to note.
Yeah, just like the experience.
Yes.
There's a lot of crowdfunding projects.
And it doesn't necessarily have to mean experience either, because there are other game projects that have had plenty of experience, publishers that have had plenty of experience that have gone on to crowdfunding. Yeah. Sorry. Well, no, yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Do you have a demo, or do you have something to see that you have,
Yeah.
Have you produced something, anything for your potential backers to see and to play? Sort of going off of that, another good point that we will talk about is, how transparent, you and your team are, or if it's just you, a lot of solo projects out there, how transparent the project is with its funds. Are you going to be releasing updates and showing how the money breaks down? Are you bringing in external backers from, outside crowdfunding, stuff like that?
Yeah, because if you don't tell where your money's going to go, then I'm not sure exactly what I'm paying for. And that nowadays that has made me rather uncomfortable about whether or not I'm going to put money down on a particular Kickstarter or not, because of how many Kickstarters have abjectly failed, because of how little they've been telling me. Or not necessarily because of how little they've been telling me, but the less that I hear from Kickstarters that I've backed, the less hope I have of anything happening out of it.
You eventually, it goes days, weeks, months without an update, and you're just like, okay, I paid money for this. Where is it? Is it being worked on even? Are there people working on it even still alive? It's stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, we are going to talk about, well, actually, hold on. Because there's a few other things that we wanted to talk about, specifically red flags.
Yeah.
There are a lot of red flags out there for crowdfunding projects. One that's not necessarily one, but, it can definitely be an indicator that you should be a little careful is, let's call it, oh, hold on. Let's call it over ambition.
Okay.
There's a lot of projects out there that have really good ideas, but maybe the team is not as experienced as they need to be, or they're asking for a little bit too much money when they don't have experience handling that much money, or they don't know what to do with it.
I think one of the most famous examples of what you're getting at is that doomed to fail Star Wars RPG that someone put up that they canceled very recently. I'm not sure where it is right now. I think I found that article on GameSpot earlier today. But a gentleman who has expressed, to be fair, they were quite transparent about their abilities, who said, hey, I don't have much skill in programming or art, but hey, give me $200,000 and I'll make you guys pretty good Star Wars RPG. That didn't happen, and thankfully he canceled the project quite early. No, it was a fan nonprofit project. Is the thing here, and I yeah,
because even if you did manage to get that thing off the ground, I imagine that Disney would have slapped him with a cease and desist very, very quickly.
This is the farthest. Oh, here it is. This is the extreme side of the spectrum, so brazenly. Let's see. He didn't have a title. Fan Star Wars Open World RPG Kickstarter canceled. Let's see if I can find the Kickstarter update. Here we go. Yep, that's all the title says. Open World RPG like Star Wars game. So it's an open world RPG like, not necessarily an open world RPG. And that's all that he had on it.
Yeah. If it's to all fledgling indie developers out there, you have big dreams, big aspirations, you want to work for Bethesda, or you want to work for, I don't know, you want to have your own company where you make really great, really awesome, really huge game experiences. Good on you. Best of luck, but tone down your expectations a little bit for when you're starting out. You know, not everyone can make Skyrim in their first year of game.
Start with RPG Maker.
Start with RPG Maker, Game Maker, you know, simple tools, simple things for simple ideas that can go really, really far. You know, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but one really good, crowdfunded project that was made I'm pretty sure it was Game Maker, the now famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, Undertale, sweeped.
Yeah, that's famous.
Yeah.
To me.
Sweeped Indie Game Awards for 2015. Now hugely popular. It actually didn't raise that much money. I think it was like $50,000 for its initial Kickstarter in 2013.
$51,124.
There it is. Yeah. So not a terribly huge amount of money, but Toby Fox, the developer of Undertale, he made it in Game Maker. Didn't overexert himself trying to make his own engine or anything like that. Pretty simple pixely graphics, but that worked to really great effect because it was simple, but it was deceptively simple. So to any, we're not going to talk about Undertale, but because anything that can be said about Undertale has already been said.
Ad nauseum.
Oh yes, but yeah. So a red flag. Getting back to our original point, overambition. Be careful if what someone's saying sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true.
And there's another red flag that I would like to point out. That goes back to the point of not having any playable content to speak of for the relevant Kickstarter. And how am I going to phrase this? It's when the idea of something is greater than the thing itself. And there are a few notorious examples of this, at least two that come to mind immediately. One of which I did put money on, and it's one that I'm sure everyone's familiar with, anyone that would care to listen to our podcast. First one being Mighty Number 9.
Oh boy, Mighty Number 9.
Yeah, someone had to open that can of worms at some point.
Yeah, so this is a good transition.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start talking about... Actually, we're going to end it on a positive note.
Okay.
Let's start with bad crowdfunding ideas. So, Mighty Number 9, it was 2013, yeah?
I believe so. It's been a couple years.
Yeah, so 2013, Keiji Inafune, famous for working on Mega Man, although his actual involvement in what ended up being Mega Man has been brought into question a few times since this Kickstarter came up. He produced a video saying, hey, Capcom's got Mega Man. They're not doing anything with it. Give me $400,000. What? Yeah, it was $400,000, yeah?
Let's see.
Or was it 800,000?
It was a significant number. It wasn't
800,000.
All I know is that they made like $3,800,000 of a $900,000 goal.
Yeah, $900,000. And they made almost 4 times that. So, he asked for money to make totally not Mega Man, and he got way more than he asked for. And now here we are, more than 2 years later, almost 3 years later, and nothing has been produced. It's where to go. Where did Mighty Number 9 go? And there's a whole lot of drama involving like the official forums, people asking, hey, I want my money back, or give me the game, and just getting like silenced and banned in the forums. And I believe they did actually release a demo.
The demo was out, yes. I did not play it, but I heard mixed things about it. Mostly about how difficult it was to get the thing to run. But people, here's the thing. They released the demo finally after people spending $3.8 million. They released the demo. I have heard only that it's meh and then nothing. Silence. People weren't talking about it. People weren't excited. People didn't care that the demo had been out, and I haven't heard anything about it since.
Which, for a game that made so much hype when the Kickstarter came out, the hype was everywhere for that.
Oh god, well, you and me both were really excited for that thing.
I love Mega Man. I love the Mega Man series, all of them, even Zero and ZX and all those, like the derivative ones that people.
Command Mission on PS2, even the ones that weren't traditional Mega Man games. Come on.
Battle Network was great. I love Battle Network.
Yeah.
And yeah, we both love Mega Man. I didn't give any money to it though. You did.
I did. I don't remember how much I put down on it is the thing. It's been so long. I wish I could say, but I didn't put nearly as much on it as another, more positive note that we'll mention later.
Oh yes. Yeah. So, Mighty Number 9. Bad Kickstarter because it's been 2 years and it's nowhere to be seen. So, there were once, actually, when the Kickstarter first came out, Hideki Kamiya, director of Platinum Games, which makes like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry.
Yeah, big name. Blocks literally everyone on Twitter. Well, if you ever sneeze at him.
Well, Platinum didn't actually make Devil May Cry. They were still Clover when they did that, I think.
Well, yes, it's the same team, same core team.
So it made Bayonetta, Wonderful 101. People were tweeting at him about Kickstarter, and he had some statements like, Inafune is not a game designer. He is a businessman. And people kind of took that really dubiously.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had this big idea of, oh, he's the guy who made Mega Man. You know, he must be great. But...
Well, here's the thing. I had never heard of the man's name until fairly recently, after the riotous success of Bayonetta.
Yeah. Which we both really like.
Yes.
Hideki Kamiya is he's definitely an oddity in the Japanese game scene because he's willing to talk shit on people.
I think it's great. I love it.
It's definitely something that there needs to be a little bit more of because Japanese business culture is very against that.
Call-outs.
So when he said that Inafune, wasn't trustworthy, well, he didn't actually say that. I'm paraphrasing, but when he called out Inafune for not having as much credit on Mega Man as people said, it made people a little dubious. And now, 2 years later, we see why.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think one of the problems was they got too much money, honestly.
And maybe they were figuring out what to do with it. Sort of thing.
They came out with like an animated TV pilot or something. They want to.
I hadn't heard of that. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. Mighty Number 9, aside from the paltry research I've had to do for this podcast, has been completely off of my radar.
Well, it's been off everybody's radar because they have been not transparent about that.
Mm-hmm.
So even if things seem really, really good, be a little careful because pay attention to dissenting voices. And
this is one of those things where that I mentioned earlier. It's the idea of the thing is better than the thing itself. And this is the point that's going to be particularly hard for us to articulate. It's much easier to point it out after the fact than it is before. You can't really smell the smoke until the fire's already started.
Yeah. Throughout the course of this podcast, there are going to be projects that we say, hey, don't give these guys money. And they're going to end up being really, really good. And we're going to have to eat our words on that. And we accept that.
Yeah.
But we might end up being right about a couple things. So,
And that's worth the podcast. That's worth the embarrassment. It's being right some of the time.
All right. So let's talk about one more bad project that, as of the release of this, will have just completed. Everyone knows what we're talking about. Psychonauts 2.
Good old hype trains a chugging. Still got coal in the engine.
So let's talk about Psychonauts for a little bit. It was a quirky third-person platformer developed by Double Fine that did not sell terribly well during its initial release. But when it was released on Steam, it garnered a reputation as a cult classic, and people really, really ended up liking it. I, personally, played it I bought it on Steam, because it was on sale, like, a couple of years ago. And I played it for a little bit, and I thought it was, it was pretty good. Humor was not my particular brand of humor, but it was definitely unique, and I could see why people really liked it.
I should point out that I have not played the game. I have no idea why it's as popular as it is because of that fact. All of my opinions are solely based on the business history of Double Fine and Tim Schafer. So I can't really.
So Psychonauts released, and then Tim Schafer made a couple of other games, notably Brutal Doom, I think it was, the one with Jack Black. And then let me go back a little bit. Tim Schafer worked on a lot of 90s adventure games, and
LucasArts?
Yeah, LucasArts made a lot of adventure games that people really liked.
And is now dead.
Yeah, it's now dead. RIP LucasArts. He came out with a Kickstarter for what was only known as the Double Fine adventure game, which itself raised a bunch of red flags because they didn't know.
Yeah, and this is that thing that it was so untransparent that not even they quite knew what they wanted to get out of the money.
No. It was called the Double Fine adventure game, and I don't think it had a title until like a year into development.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the game that would eventually become Broken Age raised, pretty much similar to Mighty Number 9, it raised like $4 million.
The way it works is, Psychonauts 2 asked for how much Broken Age made, which was $3.3 million.
Yeah. And then it was revealed that due to Tim Schafer's terrible money management skills, had run out of money, despite garnering almost 10 times what they asked for it. And they needed to release the game in halves so that they could sell the first half to pay for the second half. Such a perfect storm of BS to get people to hate on you. And I understand that Mr. Schafer rubbed a couple of the Gamergate people the wrong way, and I'm just gonna say it. I could not care less about Gamergate or anyone involved in it.
I'm still not 100% sure on what it is.
Yeah. So nothing we say about Tim Schafer will be about that. It's solely that he is not to be trusted with anybody's money. If he makes a great game, if Psychonauts 2 is wonderful, that's...
Yes, awesome. I'm happy for everyone involved.
More good games. More good games existing is wonderful. But...
I'm worried.
Do not give Tim Schafer your money. In 2010, Bobby Kotick, I think he was president of Activision, which was publishing Brutal Doom, said, yeah, Tim Schafer, he never showed up when he showed up to meetings, he missed deadlines, he couldn't handle, management, he couldn't handle things well. So, we let the project go. And, cause we thought it would not sell well, and we thought it would be mediocre. And then Brutal Doom came out, and it didn't sell well, and it was mediocre. But because this was 2010, and people hated Activision, everyone, I'm pretty sure it was 2010, everyone sort of disregarded this and just gave Tim Schafer their money anyways. And getting on to his current project, Psychonauts 2, which has already met its goal, by the way. It's not on Kickstarter, and it's not on Indiegogo. It's on a platform called Fig. And Fig is a new crowdfunding platform created solely for Psychonauts 2. It promises to use traditional crowdfunding rewards and a new thing which they're calling investments. Which
everyone should know what an investment is. It's not only are you going to put money down on the project in question, Psychonauts 2, but you're promised returns based on how well the game does. So it's it's one of those you gotta spend money and make money.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Because Tim Schafer has a personal stock in Fig, the success of Psychonauts 2, which has already succeeded, determines how well Fig will succeed. And that's more money going into Tim Schafer's pockets. I personally hope that Fig does not take off. I hope that they stay on the crowdfunding pages like Indiegogo, KickStarter, Patreon, because this giving Tim Schafer not only control of your money, but control over a portion of the indie game development scene is not a future that I want to live in.
And this is where some could admittedly say we're kind of putting on tinfoil hats about the whole ordeal. But I just want to point out a few odd things about Fig and why it's a little shady. Going to www.fig.co, which is the main page, brings you directly to the Psychonauts 2 crowdfunding page. You don't get a home screen, you go straight to the crowdfunding page for Psychonauts 2.
Yeah, it was made specifically for Psychonauts 2, and probably will be used for a lot of Tim Schafer mismanagement projects in the future.
Secondly, Tim Schafer himself is not only is president and CEO. Oh, never mind. Disregard.
He is.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, of Fig, which is owned by Double Fine, is it not? Does Double Fine not run this operation?
Well, Tim Schafer is president and CEO of Double Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, technically they're not listing anybody as they're listing Justin Bailey.
Mm-hmm. Ah, yes, I see. Okay.
Yeah, Tim Schafer's on the advisory board. Also
right.
On the advisory board is Alex Rikopoulos, from Harmonix, I believe the rock band people.
Okay.
He was also pretty notable in the crowdfunding scene a while, for one or two, like, rhythm game crowdfunding projects. So, the point is that Fig is very, very sketchy right now. We're talking about transparency. We can't really see anything that's going on inside of Fig right now.
Everything that we're saying is based entirely on what we've experienced in the past with Tim Schafer and his past experiences with crowdfunding, and it just doesn't bode well for how Fig and Psychonauts 2 will perform in the future. But at the same time, it's already reached 3.5 at this point. What is there to say except bunker down and hope it goes well, because nothing we say is going to change this.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about a couple of subpar, let's say, crowdfunding projects. Now let's talk about something good. Notably, Indivisible, which ended its funding about a month ago.
I am really excited about Indivisible, and I don't want to and I know it's going to sound like I'm kind of cherry picking who I get to say I like and who I get to say I don't, but at the same time, I do think a lot of what we said earlier in this particular episode applies to Indivisible. To start with, Indivisible was 100% transparent with how they were going to apply their funds. Let me pull up their Indiegogo page right quick.
And they almost didn't make it. They had to get an extension.
Yeah. And I think that's just has to do with how big Lab Zero is, which is to say, not terribly. They're a much smaller indie group than something as big as Double Fine, who worked previously on the first Psychonauts. But what I was getting at is Indivisible was very clear on where it was going to put its money, and was very clear on why it said it needed that money. Not only that, but they were quite clear on how they were going to fund the game in other ways, most notably through their partnership with a publisher called 505 Games. 505 Games has come out and said that if they come out and they get their 1.5 million, which they're asking for on their Indiegogo page, we will go forward and yes, they did, thankfully. We will go forward and put another $2 million. So they weren't even asking for the full price of the game, technically. They were asking for something to get on their feet, and to hopefully get an extra boost of funding from 505 Games.
Yeah, which in comparison to, say, Psychonauts 2, yeah, they said they're going to have a third-party backer, but they did not say how much that backer would give them. So they could be getting like another 10 million from this backer, or it might just be a couple of dollars and we wouldn't even know.
Yeah. Another thing that I really appreciated about Indivisible was that it had a playable prototype available from day one of the campaign. Or about day one. On day one, it was available for everyone. The day previous, it was available for those who had backed Skullgirls previously, of which I was one, thankfully. So I got in on that pretty early. And everyone was impressed by it. Everyone that played it.
I thought it was pretty good. I definitely think that there are a couple of things that could be worked on, tweaked a little bit.
But that's the thing. They said this was a prototype. This isn't even a demonstration. This isn't really a true demo of what the final product is going to be. This is a prototype. This is how the game roughly is going to work. The UI is going to completely change. The combat may change.
It's fair to call it.
Yeah. Pre-alpha. Even.
But they had something that could be played, and that, like 2 big thumbs up. And another thing is that, like you mentioned, Lab Zero, which may I note is based in LA. I'm gonna make a big deal out of this, even though I really shouldn't, because it seems like every other crowdfunding project for video games is based in San Francisco. And I can understand why that is.
Mm-hmm.
Been to San Francisco and having looked at their tech scene, I can understand why it is as big as it is for indie game developers, but that doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah.
So Lab Zero is based right here in LA, where just about an hour away from I am.
Jealous.
Oh yeah. And they had previously worked on the fighting game Skullgirls, which on release was pretty niche. I'm going to be honest. Having participated a little bit in the fighting game scene, it's nowhere near as big as I feel it should have been. But, art style turned a lot of people off. Really, what can you do about that? But it was good.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoyed Skullgirls.
Yeah, the crowdfunding campaign wasn't even for the full game. That first crowdfunding campaign that we mentioned was simply entitled "Keep Skullgirls Growing" or "Going," whichever other one, and it wound up raising about $900,000 for the express purpose of not making a new game, but just adding to a game that already existed.
Yeah, adding DLC characters.
Right.
Which they were very transparent about. They showed, where the money goes, how they work on a new character, what it takes to make a new fighting game character.
Because Lord knows they weren't getting any more money from Konami.
Oh god. We will have plenty of time to talk about Konami in later episodes. Let's leave that for later.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Speaking of later episodes, how are we doing on time right now?
We're about 30 minutes in. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the first episode, so it's going to run a little bit longer then.
Okay, that's fair.
Because we introduced what we about Indivisible. So thankfully, they got their money, and they've been releasing fairly frequent updates to talk about it, which is good. They had a reasonable estimate of when the game would be finished. It's 2017, yeah?
Yes, I believe so.
Alright.
A good while.
It's gonna take a while, but they have a lot of big aspirations, so that's a fairly reasonable idea when they want the game done. And we know that they're going to release the full game.
That's the idea.
So I kicked in about $30 for Indivisible. I kicked in just enough to get the game.
I kicked in about an extra $100 more, so I'm sitting on about $130. That and I'm going to be clear. This is the most that I've ever put in a Kickstarter. Below that is I think $40, which I put down on Mighty Number 9.
All right.
So
there's a good one for you if you're looking to have a good KickSmarter approved crowdfunding project. Look at Indivisible. They get 2 big thumbs up. So we've talked about crowdfunding projects that we enjoy. I think you want to go into pre-order corner?
Sure. I believe that's something you have most to say about, though. At least for this episode.
Yeah, for this one. So now we're going to talk about pre-order corner. which is a little last end section of the podcast, because people still buy things without them being finished, and that's dumb. I'm not
Except that's what we're discussing entirely with Kickstarters. Well,
one of those people who says never pre-order.
mm-hmm.
There are reasons to pre-order. For example, if it gives a bonus that you really, really want.
My favorite thing, the best thing that I've ever heard about whether or not you should pre-order a game is if you are convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you have set aside the money already and have taken that into account to your budget, that you're going to get this game, go ahead and pre-order it. Maybe you'll get a neat bonus. But if you're on the fence, probably not the greatest idea, and that's what we're getting at here. But sorry, I'm tripping.
But you really, default, you should be thinking, I'm probably not going to pre-order a game. Because last year, there were a huge amount of games that had, well, not huge, but there were a lot of games that were highly pre-ordered and highly panned on launch. Most notably Arkham Knight, Batman Arkham Knight, which the PC version basically just did not run. And this was, I believe, the first major release since Steam refunds. So a lot of people were refunding it on Steam. You really need to be skeptical about pre-orders. So Pre-Order Corner is going to be about AAA games. And the first episode, this one, I'm going to talk about a game near and dear to my own heart, Street Fighter V. This game, anyone even remotely involved in fighting games has heard about it. They've heard of all the characters that are in it. I'm going to talk about some of the pre-order bonuses. So, I'm not going to talk about like collector's edition stuff, like statues, art books. If you're the kind of person who's that interest, then you probably already know about that, so I don't have to talk about it. First we're going to get into the small stuff. This is something that I've always thought was kind of weird, but I guess it exists. Vendor exclusive content. So if you pre-order Street Fighter V from GameStop, you get a Ryu costume, which is Ryu without a shirt and he's got a beard, which has been dubbed by people on the internet as Hot Ryu, which I thought was kind of fun.
Sounds more like a fighting hobo to me, but
yeah, no, he looks pretty hobo-ish. He always has.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Ryu is. He's a wandering hobo.
Is he? Oh, I'm not familiar with Street Fighter V or Street Fighter in general.
Yeah, he just walks around the world looking for people to fight, and he doesn't have a home.
It's a life.
If you pre-order from Best Buy, get Cammy, which is Cammy in what appears to be snow gear. She's got like skiing goggles and snow leotard on. Still no pants though.
That would be heathenous.
Heathen. That would be terrible. In the pre-order from Amazon, you get an M. Bison costume, which gives him a skull on his shoulder, which honestly, what more could you ask for?
Yes.
And then if you order from Steam or online or on the PSN store, then you get a Chun-Li costume, which is the ball gown from Street Fighter 4, and she also has different hair. So that's the small stuff. The big thing, forget it for pre-ordering Street Fighter V, although I do not believe it is relevant anymore, is access to the beta. And this is one of the things that I will say pre-ordering is good for, if they have a beta. So, first the positives of the beta. Street Fighter V is going to have crossplay between PC and PS4, which is good. More games need to do that well. I'm going to talk about that word well in a little bit. But the game feels really, really good to play. It's a bit faster than Street Fighter 4, I mean. People have talked about the differences extensively. It's a little more, fast-paced, less emphasis on slow, deliberate movements, and more on quick mind games and reactions. and I believe so. I only got in on the last beta weekend. They ran 3 beta weekends for PS4 and Steam, I believe. I got in on the last one, and I played on Steam. So, now here's the problem. Because it seems like they're doing everything right. It seems like, oh, it's so good. They're learning from their mistakes. They're testing stuff. They're getting the balance tests out there, but they're not doing it too much so that pre-order people don't have an advantage. But when you're running a multiplayer focused game, especially a fighting game where performance is critical, you need to have good netcode and good servers. And it's just not there, which is so sad. I do not believe that they've had a single beta where everything has worked for all of the beta. Error messages come out the window when when you are playing the beta. You disconnect from the servers at random. It doesn't feel complete. And they've acknowledged this. They've acknowledged, hey, we know the servers are kind of bad, but I don't know if I have the faith in Capcom to fix that for Street Fighter V's launch. Because the PC version of Street Fighter 4 also had pretty not great netcode at the beginning. Because it was launched for Games for Windows Live, which, if anybody remembers, Games for Windows Live was terrible.
And dead.
And it's dead now, thankfully. Most everything that was on Games for Windows Live has migrated over to Steam. But, yeah. And if anyone remembers Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which I really enjoyed, but that netcode was absolute crap. And it seemed like they couldn't do anything to fix it. There are good fighting games out there with pretty decent netcode. I've been playing a lot of Guilty Gear Xrd recently, and that has pretty decent netcode. You don't frame drop too bad on a good connection. But it's not just the servers. It also seems like the netcode that they're using is a rollback system, which sometimes it'll look like you get an attack in, but the server decides, hey, I'm a little tired right now. That attack didn't happen. I missed it, and it'll just cancel it out. I'm gonna put a link to a video in the description of this, on YouTube and on SoundCloud, that shows a Street Fighter V match the same match recorded by the two different people, and it looks really, really shoddy. Which, like I said, it's a shame, because it looks like they're doing everything well. This is what a beta should be. It should be about testing the game. And if the game gets fixed by launch, I will praise Capcom. But I don't know if I have faith in them to do that, is the problem. If it gets fixed, then that's great. I'm going to be keeping my pre-order, but I do not recommend that anybody out there pre-order Street Fighter V now. Especially, I think it comes out next month in February, and I don't think that there are going to be any more beta weekends. So you're losing out there. If you know that you're like James said, if you know you're gonna buy it anyways, and you want Hot Ryu as a costume, go ahead and get it. But honestly, I would say wait for launch, wait to see if the servers are fixed. So that's this pre-order corner.
And we do know that in pre-ordering, the person who's paying for it does acknowledge that they're purchasing an incomplete product. But after a certain point and after a certain amount of history, you kind of have to sit back and think, is this really a good idea given this particular company's history with netcode or with quality control on launch day or anything like that? Going back to the first game we mentioned, Batman Arkham Knight, I pre-ordered Batman Arkham Origins. That one I pre-ordered, and I did so happily at the time. I am happy to say that I didn't have that many problems with the game, except for that one bonus that there was a particular side mission that you literally could not complete on PC. No one could complete it because of just how the hitbox for that particular event was. And Rocksteady just straight up said, we're not going to fix it. At that point, I said, okay, I'm not pre-ordering the next one. I don't care who's making it or what. And thankfully, based on my experience with Origins and my decision-making, I'm guessing I made the right choice based on what I've heard from Arkham Knight's PC port. It's all about whether or not you trust that particular developer. Nowadays, I find, personally, there's not much reason for me to pre-order anything nowadays. I usually wait a day or two before that, but I still want to take a look at a few things and say which ones are more worth your time than others.
Because AAA video games still cost $60 for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I will say there are some video games that warrant that cost, like Witcher 3. Witcher 3 is pretty decent at $60. I would still wait for a sale though.
Mm-hmm.
AAA video games still cost $60, and you can't put that kind of money. Most people don't want to put that kind of money down without knowing what they're getting. And if you're buying something for $60 months before any reviews come in, then, don't be surprised if you're not getting what you thought you paid for. Do you know what, actually, this was pretty interesting. Something, I believe it was last year, or 2 years ago, that broke the record for most pre-orders for a non-franchise game. Watch Dogs.
I didn't. You know what? I completely missed that whole campaign, like that whole pre-order campaign. So I didn't know that was even a thing. All I know about that game is that it was god awful.
Well,
or at least not great.
It was not as great as they had promised. It was not as great as the game that people thought they were pre-ordering.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't bad. It was a really average game.
It was something you would expect from Ubisoft, and it's based on its success with Assassin's Creed. Really, is all I got out of it.
It was like if Ubisoft had made the Grand Theft Auto series and then made 20 more of them.
Mm-hmm.
So pre-order numbers. Like I said, I'm not the kind of person who says never pre-order. I know that there are a lot of people out there who say that. I don't think that's necessarily true. I will say, be really, really, really careful about what you want to pre-order. So, I think that's,
yeah, I think, I guess I'll say that my stake in this little podcast is based solely on the fact that, in total, if I were to throw a dart at the board to guess at how much money I put in Kickstarters in total, just over maybe $330 to $400 in total across multitudes of games. I have regretted this for the overwhelming majority of Kickstarters, but I will say that the regret came about a year after I went through the wave of Kickstarters. So this was during the when Kickstarter was really the new hotness. People were excited for this, and I wanted to get in on these new games that were coming out that publishers would never fund. I thought the idea of putting money down on something myself that publishers would never do to get a game that I thought looked really interesting. I thought that idea appealed to me. And nowadays, obviously I try to pick and choose which ones I put money down or not. The point is, I think Kickstarter is a good thing. It's just one of those things where if it's abused, it can really sting. Almost even more so than pre-orders that kind of flop. Because, I mean, even if you do pre-order, you still get something. Like, the game comes out, and you get the game. It's not what you expected. It's not what you thought you paid for, but you got something. But with so many of these Kickstarter campaigns, you don't get anything. And no one's gonna help you. And you're screwed. I'm still kind of holding out hope that Mighty Number 9 won't suck and is still coming out, but there are still other games too that, most noticeably that really stung was a game called, gosh, The Sound of Silence was supposed to get a demo last January. 2015, last January. The day before they were supposed to have released that demo, they sent out an update over their Kickstarter page. Catastrophe! We lost the files. We tried to transfer them to the thing that you could download it to, but something with the transfer happened, and we can't get the data back, and we don't know what to do now. We're gonna get back to you. The last update, according to my memory banks, is like 6 months ago. And I was really looking forward. I thought that game looked awesome. But it was a game that was not clear on where the money was going. It was a game that had no demo to speak of. It had a demonstration in the form of a video that kind of showed what the game would look like when you would play it, but it had no demo at the time. It promised a demo sometime later that never came. So I don't want people to be burned like I have. Is why I'm here.
And that seems like such a basic thing, backing up your data. It seems so basic.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my stake in this is I have not given nearly as much money to crowdfunding as my friend James.
I'm the cautionary tale, folks.
But I do, what you said about giving money to games that publishers would never fund, that's what I'm in this for.
Mm-hmm.
I weighed two options between myself. Do I want a future with really boring $60 AAA games that have tons of DLC on them and have no original ideas, but are really, really safe? Or do I want a future that has a lot of indie development going on that, maybe not everything works out, but at least there's new stuff every now and then? I decide I'd prefer the indie future. I would like to give things a chance and take a risk. If things don't work out, you gotta be careful about what you do. But it's having a future with a few really good crowdfunded titles that would never have gotten AAA support is better than a world full of bland, boring schlock that comes out and everybody forgets about it within a month. You need more games like your Undertales or,
We want more stuff to come out of left field. We want left field to be full of so many games that we can't even look past the games that are coming.
Yeah. We want it to be a developer-centered, market. Because if AAA doesn't change the way that it's going, then indie gaming is probably going to be, because I haven't played a AAA game in a very long time, if I'm being honest. Maybe like AA at most. I haven't bought like any major console seller. Well, I guess Smash Brothers technically.
I'm trying to think of the last big game I bought, and that big game was Splatoon from way back when. So
we're going to talk about Nintendo in later episodes and what they do. But yeah, we want a good future for indie games. I think both of us do. But we still want the relationship between consumer and developer to be a healthy one. And to that end, you need to hold developers accountable. You need to make sure that developers know that they have people who have given them money, who believe in their project, who want something done and finished.
The problem is, as of right now, Kickstarter tends to not be that, depending on which Kickstarter campaign you look at.
And we hope that, having listened to this, you enjoyed it, and we'll come back to future episodes. You can find us on Tumblr, YouTube, and SoundCloud, and I think I'm gonna put a link to the Twitter page too at the end of this.
Yep.
Alright, so see you guys in 2 weeks. Later.
Peace.